The Broncos are also going to be a very fascinating team to watch. I'm going to love watching these two go back and forth all year long. Santa Clara, 23-10 a year ago. They were third place for the second straight year. They were in the NIT and were bounced in the first round. Herb Sendek has done a great job. This will be his 8th season with the Broncos. 20-plus win in 3 of the last 4 years. That one where they didn't reach that was the pandemic year, so obviously that was most teams and hit that 20-win plateau again. There's a lot to go into with this team, but before we do, let's go ahead and go into the interview I had with Herb Sendek, and he could talk a little bit more about what he sees this Broncos team as and what we could expect moving forward. I'm happy to bring on Santa Clara head coach Herb Sendek. He's in his 8th season with the Broncos, coming off back-to-back third-place finishes. Coach, how's it going? How was your summer? And how were you able to take any time off over the summer?
Yeah, no, for sure. We had a great summer. Our guys worked really hard. I thought we showed marked improvement as the days went by. And we're excited now to be at the beginning stages of regular season practice.
Yeah, and obviously there's a lot of transition coming into this year. You had to replace 5 starters going into this year. You had back-to-back NBA first rounders, obviously, is a huge kind of like feather in the cap with both not only Brandon Podziemski but also Jalen Williams. Thinking about just how has this team started to gel in these first few weeks of practice, knowing that there's a lot of turnover on this team.
Yeah, we start as a collection of individuals, and we work really hard every day to become a team, a cohesive unit where guys carve out roles, understand their roles, and accept their roles. So we're at the beginning stages of that process here, a few days into the start of practice. We made progress along those lines throughout the summer, but now that we have more time together and we're actually practicing on a regular basis, we expect to really move that needle. But you're right, we have a number of new players, and we have to come together and become the best team we could possibly be.
And obviously there's a lot of kind of really interesting pieces that you've brought in. We can talk about Adama Ball, Jalen Benjamin, Johnny O'Neal. There's a lot of guys who you brought in who have a lot of upside. And as you've put together that class of incomers and transfers, what excites you about the potential of that group?
Well, I think we have a collection of experience. We have versatility. And we have talent, and I think together with the returning players, we have a team that has good depth, obviously, with the caveat that it's always important to remain healthy.
Would you, just looking on paper, it actually kind of looks like that this might be a deeper team than you've had maybe in the last couple of years. Is that fair to say, at least early on?
Absolutely, Zach. I think without question, it's the deepest team we've had in some time.
And you talked about some of the returners, and obviously we got to see a lot of really nice things from Christoph Tilley at the end of last season, and he started to kind of like play into what might be a more significant role this coming year. To kind of talk about what the work he's been able to do in the off season and what his outlook might be for this coming year.
Well, you're right to recognize Christoph. He really started to come on the second half of last season, his freshman year. He piggybacked that with a tremendous off season. Most notably, he's really changed his body. He's much stronger. He obviously has a great deal more confidence, and we're expecting him to continue to progress and be an outstanding player for us.
As you kind of like think about what his role, because obviously like this is a larger league. A lot of teams, like you think about St. Mary's and Gonzaga just being the size of those teams. How have you seen like maybe like how his size and his conditioning and strength how that's improved? How do you see that translating against some of the better teams in the league?
Well, I think his improved physical being is impacting his game in every way in a positive way. This is a team here at Santa Clara this year that has tremendous size. We have to be among the biggest teams in all of college basketball.
Yeah, and then another one of those, another returner that really kind of like started to play better down the stretch is Cameron Tongue. Talking about what his development and like kind of like how you've seen kind of his growth over the last year going into his junior year.
Yeah, no, Cameron has been on a steady incline, moving forward, improving each step of the way. And once again, you're absolutely right, Zach. The last part of the previous season, together with Christoph, they gave us a good 1-2 punch coming off the bench, and ultimately in key moments, in the second half when the games were on the line, both of those young men were on the court playing productive basketball for us.
And so someone we didn't get to see a whole lot of last year because he got banged up was Carlos Marshall Jr. What's his status right now, and how is he progressing?
Yeah, it was really a gut punch for our team last year. After our third game of the year, he was out for the rest of the season with an injury. Fortunately, he's made a full recovery and right now is healthy. I think he's in the best shape of his career, and we're looking forward to a lot of productivity from him. But certainly his loss last year was very significant for us, and we're thrilled that he was able to come back this year, and looking forward to having him, play an important role for our team.
You have a lot of pieces that you're going to be able to mix and match. Are early on, do we think that you might be using a few more, obviously like experimenting with a few more combinations in the lineups, or how do you see kind of like the early part of the season working out with not only the returners, but then also obviously so many new pieces?
Yeah, that's the puzzle that we're trying to put together right now, and it seems like the thinking may change from Monday to Tuesday, from Wednesday to Thursday. But that's not unique to us. That's what teams around the country right now are doing, especially with so many teams welcoming, more than two or three newcomers. And so it takes some time. There's a process to learn about each other and to determine, what are the best combinations? How do you want to play? Um, and so that's what we're trying to figure out right now.
And you have a schedule that's going to actually set you up really well if you're able to kind of like find the puzzle, I guess, a little more quickly. Think about like those games against Stanford, the Emerald Coast Classic, which gives you great opportunities. As you've kind of like built the last few years, you've had back-to-back 20-win seasons. We're in the NIT. You've kind of been able to kind of grow slowly and slowly. The schedule really seems like it sets you up potentially for, at least has more opportunity to put together an NCAA tournament type of resume. As you kind of put together that schedule, was that kind of the mindset of late? And how do you see like early on, obviously, because there's a lot of challenges in the schedule?
Yeah, no, our schedule is very challenging. Once again, arguably the most challenging schedule we have faced, and that was very purposeful. We want to play a great schedule. Our mindset is to play as difficult a schedule as we possibly can. So we're a very willing partner when it comes to scheduling, and I think our team will be challenged night in, night out. And if we can prevail in enough of those games, we have positioned ourselves to be an NCAA tournament team.
And how is like of the attitude of the returners, and now they kind of have seen like that there is progress, there's growth. Like again, like thinking about the guys like Tilly and Tongue and Marshall and Napper, who are all coming back and seeing how this team has grown. Do you see like kind of like those guys taking a little bit more of like the cultural and leadership role on this team, or do you see like already some of the new guys starting to step into those roles?
Well, I think it's a combination. Leadership isn't reserved in our program for one or two players. Over the course of the long season, we all have opportunities to both be leaders and followers, myself included. And and so I think it's a combination of both. We have returners who have outstanding leadership attributes, but we also have new guys who are older, experienced, and don't have to wait in line to be a leader.
And obviously, like, it's probably a really important thing to kind of figure out, like who those guys, their step up early, because you got lost so many really key guys on that leadership front from a year ago. And I mean, guys, I think of Keyshawn Justice as kind of like the chief among them on that team last year, who had been at Santa Clara for 5 years. And just kind of talk about like guys like here, Podziemski, who and what they meant in last year's team and what they meant maybe for the younger guys that are still here.
Sure. No, if you have a healthy program, the older guys are always helping the new guys. Your culture is passed on from one team to another to some degree, but at the same time, you have to work on culture each and every day. You're never finished with it. But guys who lay the foundation, who set the tone, who establish the standards, that really helps and goes a long way. But just because those guys did it last year and we have some returners who learn from them doesn't mean that we don't have heavy lifting to do every day now.
All right. And then as we kind of head out, how kind of was it almost a little more satisfying as you're kind of watching the NBA draft, seeing not only Brandon Podziemski go as early as he did, but then see that he only ended up down the street, that he ended up actually with the Warriors. He'll probably either spend some time between there and Santa Cruz, and that he'll be around and have an opportunity to be around the program a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't expect him to be in Santa Cruz. I think the expectation is for him to have an important role on this year's team with Golden State. But obviously, we're tremendously proud of him, extremely happy for him. He had a remarkable season last year, co-WCC Player of the Year, 19th pick in the NBA draft. And we're so excited and looking forward to continuing to cheer for him. And you're right, the fact that he's down the street here playing for the Warriors is an added benefit. We can see him more often. In fact, he was here last weekend for practice. And so we keep him in the neighborhood, and, that obviously facilitates us staying in close touch.
Yeah, and he couldn't ask for two better mentors at that point guard spot with Steph Curry and Chris Paul this year.
Amen to that. I mean, I'm so happy that he's together with those two. I think you're exactly right. I mean, if you were going to handpick two guys in the league to be a mentor for a young guard, how could you do better than Paul and Curry? Two guys I have just immense respect for, not only with their basketball greatness, but with regard to the kind of people they are. So Brandon's opportunity to learn how to be a pro from those two guys is going to be second to none.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Coach, for hopping on and talking some Santa Clara basketball. I'm sure you're excited that we're only a few weeks away from getting games going. So thanks a lot for hopping on, and we'll be in touch down the road.
Zach, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it, and enjoy a great college basketball season yourself.
Yeah. Thanks, Coach.
Appreciate it.
Once again, thanks to Coach Sendek for hopping on, talking a little bit Bronco basketball. So this team is, I think, going to be really fascinating to watch, as I mentioned before, because not only has this team been able to kind of figure it out the last couple of years. Obviously, you have Jalen Williams, you have Brandon Podziemski, but there's a lot of pieces on that team that I think have high ceilings because of who they bring back. Unlike USF, I think there's a couple of people on this Santa Clara team who might be playing larger roles in their returning because as a returner than maybe some of the USF guys. First off, and talked a little bit about it, Christoph Tilley, I think, is going to be one of those guys as we kind of go through. Like, he had a great end of the season last year. He didn't get a whole lot of playing time. Overall, just 12 minutes a game. But toward the end of that season, he was a double-digit score in 5 of the last 10. In that NIT game, he had 16 points, 8 rebounds in 32 minutes. You started to see what he could be. And he's going to be challenged in practice and in the non-conference because he's not alone on that post. He has some very experienced guys who are also going to be fighting for playing time. Francisco Cafaro, the 7-1 center transfer from Virginia, he's going to be a part of that, and really giving Tilly a lot of opportunity to battle and against a high major caliber talent, and then also try to he's going to be able to grow very quickly, I think, as we saw what he was able to do a year ago. And we know in the WCC you need to have size, and Tilly has that size. And so we're going to see, I think, a lot of really good progression from him, and he's going to play a key role. And also Cameron Tongue, I talked about it with Coach Sendek, because he also got better and better as the season went along. He had increased points per game and increased rebounds per game in conference play, shot 50% from the field. I think he's still going to play a little bit more of a role coming off the bench with this squad, but I fully expect him to be a key contributor on this team. And this team just seems deeper than it did a year ago, and looks deeper than it was a year ago. Think about Tilly, you think about Tongue. Carlos Marshall Jr. was supposed to be an impact guy a year ago and supposed to be able to play a significant role on that team, and he quit, and he did not get that shot because he got hurt early on in the year, missed the rest of the season. His return is going to be a huge lift for Santa Clara going into this season. And just the number of guys that you see that are coming in, and first and foremost, everyone points to Adama Ball, the Arizona transfer. This is a kid who was ESPN Top 100, highly recruited, on the French national team, on the French U19 team. He played over the summer, played well over the summer in France. He only got to play 8.2 minutes a game last year for Tommy Lloyd, but is he the Jalen Williams, Brandon Podziemski replacement? Is he that guy? Only time will tell. I think it's far too early to say that there'll be anybody who will be the Jalen Williams or Brandon Podziemski of this year's team, because I think that's an unfair expectation that there will be somebody like that, because nobody saw it to be Jalen Williams. Nobody thought it would be Podziemski. And they both exceeded expectations, highly exceeded expectations. Both became NBA first rounders. And to think that there's another one on this team is an unfair thing to say of anybody and any team, that there's going to be another one, to borrow from DJ Khaled. No, so is there someone who could follow? Maybe, but I don't think that's a fair expectation of anybody, that there's going to be someone who can follow in the footsteps of those two. And another storyline for this Santa Clara team, I think, is going to be the fact that they lost their entire starting 5 from a year ago. The thing about the fact that Brandon Podziemski is gone, Carlos Stewart is gone, Keyshawn Justice is gone, Parker Brown is gone, Jaden Bediako is gone. The entire starting 5 is gone, and now they have to retool and redo this lineup. And what does that look like? Is Christoph Tilly going to be the guy right away? Are we going to see Francisco Cafaro be that role early on? I probably expect Carlos Marshall to be in that starting lineup early on. Adama Ball, probably. He'll be in there. How much of a role will Johnny O'Neal, the transfer from American, be? This is one of the better three-point shooters for American, 39% from the field, 39% from three-point range, 11 points per game last year. He's going to be a key figure for Santa Clara. Tyree Bryan coming over from Charleston Southern. This is another guy who you really are going to have to watch out for. 6'6" guard. He was also a high percent three-point shooter, 42% from the field, 10.5 points, 5.5 rebounds from the guard spot. So this is a Santa Clara team that is probably deeper, even if they lost their entire starting five from a year ago. Because between the returners and the newcomers, each of them could end up in this starting lineup. Each of them could end up playing a significant role going into this season. And how, like we talked about with USF, how quickly can they gel? How quickly can they put it together? How quickly can they find their rhythm and their rotations? And it's probably going to be a work in progress as we go through this non-conference schedule and before we get to conference play. And then it leads to the question of, can Santa Clara break through and reach the NCAA tournament? Like talking about USF, a lot of things have to go right. I think we have to see Christoph Tilley make that next leap. I think Adama Ball has to be that guy. Not Podziemski, Jalen Williams level, but he has to be a significant contributor for this to work. I think we're going to have to see Carlos Marshall be healthy. And we're going to have to see Jalen Benjamin and Johnny O'Neal and Tyree Bryan all contribute in a big way because of how much they are missing, how much they cannot rely upon, or not to say can't rely upon, but just like there's a lot of pieces that have to be able to fit for this team to work and to pick up the wins they need. And I think it is possible because much like USF, Santa Clara has put together a schedule that's going to give them plenty of opportunities to get big wins. They're going to have opportunities to pick up key wins, and then also they've given themselves enough chance just in case that game here or there falls through. Like we saw a couple years ago with Santa Clara, that maybe that stretch in December where Josip Vrankic missed games and they dropped a couple games that they shouldn't have. And many might say that is what cost them a potential at-large bid, was what happened in the non-conference. They've given themselves more opportunities for big wins. And looking at this schedule, again, talk about what USF did. Santa Clara is not far behind on that. They'll be at Stanford on November 14th. They'll be playing in the Emerald Coast Classic the weekend of the 24th. They will play Oregon, and then they play either Alabama or Ohio State. All of those games are going to be great opportunities. I do think that they'll have a far better chance against Ohio State than Alabama, but in either case, it's going to be a great opportunity, and they can remain. I think they can take care of Oregon early on in the season. Oregon usually doesn't play all too well early on. They're going to be at Cal. They have New Mexico. They have Utah State, Washington State, San Jose State, who was a surprise team a year ago. Obviously not an NCAA tournament team, but a far better team than a lot of people expected that they would be. There's a ton of opportunity for Santa Clara in this non-conference to be able to pick up good wins. And even if they drop a game here or two, there's plenty of chances to get it back. There's plenty of chances to get it back with any one of these teams. I said Cal, and Cal was terrible a year ago, but I expect Cal to be a lot better this year with Mark Madsen as the head coach, with some of the talent that he was able to bring in very quickly. So I do think that that's going to be a much better game now than it did look maybe 5 months ago, 6 months ago. New Mexico is going to be a hell of a game. St. Mary's also has them on their schedule. And New Mexico has one of the best backcourts in the country coming back. Utah State is always a tough matchup and just crushed Santa Clara a year ago. So that's going to be a game where they're going to have them at the Levy Center. That's going to be a little bit of maybe not necessarily a revenge game, but there's going to be something to prove for the Santa Clara team, even if the cast of characters will be nearly completely different than the team they saw a year ago. So a lot of opportunity. This is the Santa, and once again in the conference, same thing like we talked about, like I mentioned with USF. They're going to have to avoid getting caught in the dogfight with USF and LMU. Those three are going to, there won't be two that if there's one to get to the NCAA tournament, one of them will have to separate themselves from the other two and clean up well against the other two opponents. They cannot get into a dogfight with these other schools, because if they do, they'll all end up missing the tournament. So one of them is going to have to emerge. One of them is going to have to play well enough to separate themselves. And that could also be because you may not have to beat St. Mary's. You may not have to beat Santa Clara or Gonzaga, excuse me. Do I think they can beat either one of them? I do, actually. I do think that they can beat either one of them. I think USF is capable of beating either one of them this year. And Santa Clara did beat St. Mary's a couple seasons ago, so we know it's possible for Santa Clara to do it. They haven't been able to get over the hump against Gonzaga. They got close a year ago. And this is not, I don't think this is as good a Gonzaga team as a year ago. But we need to wait and see of where the Santa Clara team is going to rank up against the team of a year ago. So in the overall, has this Santa Clara team put themselves in a good position? Absolutely. They have absolutely put themselves in a good position for a potential NCAA tournament bid, which they have. This is a team that has not been there in a long, long time. They have given themselves, they have the schedule to do it. They have the potential pieces that can get them there. Now it's a matter of just getting the wins and avoiding enough of the pitfalls that will come along the way. Win what you're supposed to win, and then pick up a few of these key Q1, Q2 games that will help you get over the hump. So, in the grand scheme of things, where do I see this Santa Clara team? I think they're also going to be somewhere between that 3 to 5 range. I think that's about where you should expect to see Santa Clara. Do I think they're a 20-win team again? Yes, I do. I do think they're a 20-win team again. I think the postseason is going to end up depending upon what happens in the non-conference. I do think there is more variability, I think, to Santa Clara than there is to USF. I said USF, I think, is at least an NIT team. I think Santa Clara is maybe a notch below a guarantee NIT team. Do I think they have the potential to get to the NCAA tournament? Absolutely. But I think that this is a team that's going to be hovering somewhere on the bubble of the NIT, if not getting in solidly. So I think that's about where Santa Clara will fall. And we'll have to see how this all plans out. But that's roughly where I have the Broncos going into the season.